We'll be designing a spring wreath today using a 14-inch grapevine wreath that we picked up from Hobby Lobby. It ran $4.99, but we also used a 40% off coupon that you can pick up online or in their catalog. But we're also using a moss-covered birdhouse that we picked up from Craft Outlet, which, as you can see, fits in the central portion of this wreath perfectly. Keep in mind, these wreaths are no different in cost than an 18-inch. However, you do save weight, which ultimately saves money if you do ship. So, again, you don't save money buying it, but if you do ship online, you do save a significant amount of money because, you're using a lot more branches for an 18-inch wreath. So, if you can purchase these, I recommend you do so. If you ever want a larger wreath, all you have to do, which I've shown you guys in the past, is extend the foliage around the perimeter to simulate a larger wreath. That's a very easy method to creating a larger wreath using a smaller base. But this came from Craft Outlet, like I said before. It's just placed in the middle. We don't have it attached yet. To attach it, we're going to be using 22 gauge florist wire from Michael's, from Joann's, Hobby Lobby. They all sell it, even Walmart. But the item number for this is KC1053, and it's just a metal frame covered in moss, and then they used a very thin fishing line or even twine to keep the moss in place. But we're going to be attaching it using 22 gauge wire at different points, so most likely the top 2 corners, and then potentially 1 in the middle and the bottom, or 2 on the left and right hand corners. So very easy to attach, especially with this size wreath, and we're going to just use that wire like I said before. But we're going to attach florals and greenery, not completely around the wreath like we've done in the past. We're going to create an L-shaped design with a bow in the lower left-hand corner. So all of our foliage and flowers are going to be on the left-hand side, and we're going to keep the nice, beautiful grapevine showing on the right-hand corner. So let's get to attaching our birdhouse using our wire. So now that we have our birdhouse situated, now what we're going to do is incorporate some ferns. And like I said earlier, we're working with very airy material. Our birdhouse is so thick and covered in moss that we don't really want to add too much bulky material to make the entire wreath look very heavy. So what we're going to do now is incorporate some fern. And you guys have seen me use this fern many times in the past. This is actually the fern that I purchase in bulk and use in my rose gold wreaths. It's a very nice quality fern. It's not cheap looking whatsoever. And the nice thing about this is that it comes with different shades. As you can see, we already used a lower portion for a rose gold wreath, which is that darker color. But as you get to the top, the leaves get smaller, they get finer, and more of that lime green chartreuse color starts to show. But this came from Hobby Lobby in their year-round section, and it was $11.99, 50% off. And the item number for this is 116293. And we're just cutting off the smaller pieces towards the top, which are more of that bright green. And when you cut them close to the base, you do got a nice half-inch stem to be able to work with. And every time we add one of these, we do bend them with our fingers to make them more realistic. So we'll place one going downhill, and we'll place one going uphill. This one's going to be a little bit closer towards this side rather than this one. Since we are going to create an L-shaped design, we want this part to be more full and kind of stop somewhere around here. It can be a slight curve. It doesn't have to be a perfect L, but we don't want to go too far past that. And it's not going to take too many, so if you do have a leftover green, by all means use it. We'll place another one there. We'll place one going uphill. And notice it's not filling in. You still see the majority of the grapevine. This is just for the very tips. You're going to be able to see the entire spray since we're not going to load up on everything. But this is just more to showcase the tips. So we're going to cut one more piece. And place it right here, a little bit lower, to kind of cascade going downhill. We do want to have that nice cascade, and this is where we're going to stop. And a lot of you guys may be questioning why we place some going uphill and place some going downhill. We don't want everything to just be going downhill. We do want that waterfall effect down here, but up here we do want to have a little off kilter. If we were designing completely around the wreath, we would take our greenery and place it all going in the same general direction. But since this is not a complete wreath going all the way around, we do want to have pieces going uphill to kind of taper off towards up here, and then down here we want to taper off. So think of it as you have either end completely in the inside is nice and full, but towards the end we are going to fill in less. We're going to make it not so that it's a sudden drop off from grapevine to florals. So we're going to slowly gradually get less as we get down here and as we get up there. So before we proceed any further, we're going to begin adding our bow. And the ribbon we're using today is this beautiful pink and white stripe that came from Craft Outlet. It came as a 10-yard spool, 1.5 inches wide, and the item number is Q614309-28. And I already cut one strip of a 20-inch tail, so each tail is approximately 20 inches in length. And the reason we're adding it before we're adding the greenery and our ribbon is because we are going to add some substance to this wreath, but I do want to make sure our bow is situated before we get to adding everything else. Reason being, we're not going to incorporate flowers or foliage within the bow like we did in the moss green velvet ribbon that we created a little while ago. So we're going to create a bow using loops approximately 4.5 to 5 inches wide. We don't want to go too large for today's design. So no more than 4.5 inches to 5 inches. Pinch and twist. I do have an in-depth tutorial creating a bow of this style on my Facebook page. I will share it within the group as well. It takes you guys a little bit closer and shows you exactly what I'm doing with my hands. So I'm thinking 3 loops on either side and then 1 additional loop on one of the sides so that we have 7 loops total. And then we'll snip it. Always snip your bows leaving a little excess. It'll be hidden later once you fluff your bow, but that ensures your bow's not gonna fall apart. If it does get a little loose, you still have a little wiggle room with that little extra piece of ribbon. So now we're just gonna place our tails behind our bow, and now we'll come back in with the pipe cleaner and attach it the same way we attach all of our bows. So we're going to place this in the lower left-hand corner. Just like that. And at this point, what we can do is begin fluffing it. The bow doesn't have to look exactly like a perfect bow. We are going to come back in with some florals, but we do want to add a little substance in the lower left-hand corner. Just like that. So let me zoom out, show you guys exactly how far the tails go down. So the tails do go a good distance down, which is perfectly fine. The longer and larger your wreath is, the more you can charge for it. And just by having those ribbon streamers go all the way down like that, you can charge a little bit more money for it, but of course, we will run our fingers through it and curl it or adjust it as needed, depending on what look we're going for later on. So now that we have our bow in place, we're going to come back in and use some of our filler foliage mixed in with some of our florals. The nice thing about this is that it has a finer texture, greenery, and then it also has some grass, some different colored blossoms, and then also some berries at the very tip. So we're just going to break this down. We've used this in a previous video, bits and pieces. So we're going to break this down and begin peppering some of them in. Feel free to use whatever florals you have. Again, this is just a leftover bush. If you have a spray that you like or something that's left over, feel free to use that. This is a very economical design. We're not adding too much to it. So this is a great project to use up your leftovers that you may have. We're cutting them in various lengths. So this is a nice long piece. We'll come in and bring that closer to the center. And then also with these, what we can do is angle them down. Just like that. So let me zoom in a little bit. By using fillers like this on such a small wreath, it really does help with scale, and it also fills in very, very quickly. especially with the mixture of florals with greenery. It bulks up the entire design. And we're not really worrying too much about getting everything perfect at this point. As you can see, we have a lot of bare spots. We have things shooting out a lot further than others. We'll come back in and adjust all of that. We're just focused on getting some of our florals in. So we have 2 more pieces. And also, as I said in the past, we always want to make sure that whatever is around our bow is also underneath our bow. So as you can see, we do have an opening there. So I'll take one of these and place it underneath our bow. That way everything is proportionate and even all the way around. So now what we're going to do is we're going to begin adding some of our tulips, and then we can fill in with some additional greenery. So now we can start designing with some of our tulips. The tulips match beautifully, and the nice thing about these is that they're an individual flower head, such as roses, most sunflowers, sometimes they're spray. But I really like the look of this and incorporating them in a certain way. We're going to incorporate these the same way we incorporated them into our grave saddle, using different flowers. We used some African roses for that. But we're going to have them all shooting out the same direction around the perimeter. Some of these are cut longer, some of these are cut shorter. But with these, what I have found is you really want to manipulate the stems. That is where you can get that effect. So by bending the stems a certain way, rather than having them go straight up and down, really truly makes the wreath. So what I mean by that is bending your stems. So we're going to have these curving this way and those curving downhill. We'll take another, we'll place it closer towards the bird nest, birdhouse. And we'll have some of those facing the same direction. So if you don't have these, you can purchase single head tulips. They also sell tulips with many different flowers at Hobby Lobby, and they also carry them at Michael's. Michael's is pretty famous for those type of tulips with multiple heads like that. But I do prefer, for this specific design, the single head tulips, or any single head flower for that matter. And notice that none of the flower heads are touching. That is very critical when designing with tulips like this. None of the flower heads are touching. And we are trying to space them out. So now we'll be placing some of them downhill. So this one's perfectly straight, and to show you guys what I mean by changing that. So this one's shooting straight out, and to fix that, all we're going to do is just simply bend the stem, just like that. So we have 3 left. From this particular spray. We'll bring one a little bit closer to the bow. But also notice that we are kind of staggering them. None of them are the same exact height. This one's a little bit lower, a little bit further back. You really want to create depth within a wreath. So by having them staggered like that, really makes it visually appealing and also makes it as though you're not trying to strategically place them a certain way. And we can adjust them a little bit later on. So this is what we have so far. And we will fill in around there as well as there. So that's what one whole spray of tulips looks like. We're going to break down a second spray and pepper in a couple more on the right hand side, and then a few more wherever needs a piece or two, so maybe right there and above. So now we're going to mimic what we did up top, but in the opposite direction for down below. Like I said before, this side can extend a little bit further than up top, just for the design that we're creating today. So now we're going to place one more final tulip on the right hand side. And this one we're going to place a little further back on the left hand side rather. So we'll place this one a little bit further back, again for that drama, that sense of depth. And this is what we have so far. Notice all of the tulips are going uphill from this point on, and then to blend it in we have some shooting downhill, and then a few shooting towards the right. To add a different color and a little pop of color, we're going to be adding some of this beautiful lavender. This is the same lavender we worked into the twig wreath that we created a couple weeks ago using the hydrangeas, the ranunculus, the variegated foliage, and of course the lavender. So I have 2 sprays of this left. It was $5.99 from Hobby Lobby, 50% off, and the item number for this is 9141209. I'm not sure if they carry this on the website. If they do, of course, I will put it on the material list. But just in case they don't, feel free to substitute with any lavender that you'd like. Some of them are a little bit darker, which are showcased in the twig wreath. But this one is a little bit brighter. It matches this one very nicely. It adds a nice pop of color. We are missing one of the flowers on this, so we have 4 flowers off the other spray, and if need be, we could use these three flowers as well, but we're also going to be using some of the foliage that comes with it today. It has a nice soft lamb's ear texture. So I just broke down one spray, and we'll begin adding them. So since we are dealing with single head flowers that we are trying to make a statement, we're not going to be having these flowers touch. So when we incorporate the lavender, we are going to make sure that we're not having them touch the tulips. Place another one there. So very few flowers are true blue. Lavender, you can get away with this shade, which is a very, very dark purple, almost a blue. So if you are trying to incorporate some blue into your wreaths, make sure that it's an actual flower that is blue, and very few flowers are blue. I don't think any are actually true blue, but some have a blue shade. So we're going to zoom in a little bit. So just keep that in mind, especially when the 4th of July starts coming and we're starting to decorate with that. We're not going to be using flowers if we are going for that realistic look that are blue, just for realistic reasons. Again, you don't want your flowers to touch, so keep that in mind as you decorate. And for this design, it's perfectly okay to have some flowers shooting out rather far, some that are close. We do want to add texture to it. We're not adding so much that we want to make it even. So this is not going to be a perfectly symmetrical wreath, which is perfectly fine. That is the look we're going for. And it's almost a 3D effect. Some of the flowers are protruding a lot further than we've done in the past. And as always, we do want to decorate underneath the bow. So we'll take one of our lavender pieces and place it underneath. So we do have one piece of lavender left, since one spray was missing one. And the perfect place for that is going to be up above. So we'll just place that right there. And we do have some greenery that we can pepper in. But look at how pretty this is turning out. So now's the point where we can begin filling in so that we don't see any of the glue or any grapevine showing on the left-hand side. Right-hand side, perfectly acceptable to show your grapevine, but we do want to bulk up the left-hand side a little bit more. And to do so, we're going to be using that greenery from the lavender. We just broke it down into smaller pieces. So let me zoom in a little bit to show you guys the bare spots that we have. We have a little adjacent to the birdhouse right there. So we're going to come back in and just use some of the smaller pieces that we broke down, just like this. And we'll be placing them there. So as a designer, I've always been very frugal, and rather than cutting into a brand new spray or brand new bush of greenery, by using the existing greenery that we have left over from the lavender, instead of just scrapping those few pieces, we're able to finish projects like this inexpensively without purchasing any additional greenery. So whenever we can save money, I always like to do that. So just by peppering in a few of those, it bulks it up. And here we have a bit that's a little bit longer. We'll just pull back our bow. Of course, if you don't have the lavender or are not interested in using it in this project, you can feel free to use any other greenery. If you have any greenery that I'd consider bulky, like boxwood or ficus, by peppering in a few pieces like this, it's really not going to add too much bulk to your design, but it is going to cover any of your mechanics and any of the glue that's showing. And there we go, a very cost-effective, beautiful wreath. Now our finishing touches pertains to the ribbon tails. So to fix those, what we can do is just have them lying straight. What we also can do is kind of curl them, which I really enjoy for spring and summer. So to do that, all we're doing is just gathering it, rolling it with our fingers, and then letting them cascade a little bit. The most important part about the bow is making sure that it doesn't look awkward. And what I mean by awkward is that there's no kinks or crinkles. So by going like something like that, it truly ruins your wreath, in my opinion. Of course, it's just my opinion, because if I'm able to see any creases, it's just a big turn off for me for the wreath. So just run your fingers through each loop, each tail, until you get it exactly the way you like it, which this, in this case, looks perfect to me. Of course, when we go to take pictures of our final design, what we're going to want to do is any final adjustments, we're going to take a picture, look back at it, see if there's anything that doesn't look right, fill in, take away, adjust accordingly. And we can only do that once we go to take our pictures on our backdrop. So I hope you enjoyed this and love the simplicity of it. Again, very cost effective. We didn't use a whole bunch of florals or a whole bunch of greenery, and just a few yards of ribbon on a 14-inch grapevine wreath. So again, hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.